Hello, cohorts, and welcome to this week's interview with Noelle Ray Crovo and coupled by
Bobbi Ray Carter,
my fabulous mother,
Mama,
who is the longest running show host on HSN, so if you may recognize her, that'd be why. So, little context, little background. Like I said, been there for a long time, 37?
That's it.
37 years, which is not a decade older than me, as we previously established. Off camera.
Close.
No big deal. And the cool part about that is I figured with today's, like this week's readings were very applicable to long-term strategy, right? And a lot of different experiences that could have come along the way. So I figured, why not talk to mom? Why not record it, make it exciting, a little different, add a little spice this week.
Yeah.
And let's dive right in. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, ready.
Yeah, ready.
I'm gonna go into serious mode.
Okay.
Serious mode activated.
Okay.
Strategic You made me laugh.
Sorry.
It's fine. Strategic communication is regarded to be the most effective when senior management, notably the CEO, is leading the initiative. In your experience, do you agree or not, and why?
I definitely agree. I've been through, obviously in 37 years, a lot of different presidents, but one in particular, Mindy Grossman, when she came in as our CEO, and she was our CEO for like 10 years. She was just, first of all, she's a powerhouse, just a very powerful, persuasive person. And I think she came in at a time when the business is kind of like, it needed a little bit of an injection of something. And when she came in, one of her main words that she had all of us sort of live by and work by was disruption, which was really great. So, because no matter who you are, what level you worked at, it was good to be disruptive, to kind of try something a little bit different, to kind of ignite the customers or re-engage them, because the business has been around for like a long time now. So it was great. She brought in like a lot of wonderful celebrities that just made, I think the main thing it did is it elevated the perception of television shopping.
Love that. Now, do you think because those words came from her versus someone who was in like middle management, do you think that made a difference to how the company like embraced disruption, right?
I think because it came from her, but it was also the way she shared it with everyone. Like, we would have like tons and tons of town meetings. So, I mean, and she was great with that, and actually her whole staff, and just really engaging people. So I think that people, it didn't become just like a word, but people felt a part of it, felt that they could participate and it would make a difference for, me as an individual and everybody else, depending on whatever their job was.
Interesting. Yeah, that's one of the big things this week is saying that like a message has more clout when it comes from the CEO. Right. And that's really important for people outside of the organization.
Right, because a lot of times, and I've been through many different presidents, and you'll be like, you see them once a year. So that's the other thing that I think makes such a huge difference is when they really do come down to the floor and come down to the studios and walk the halls and have meetings where everybody can interact. So that makes a big difference.
I completely agree, like especially for the bosses that I've had in the past too, the ones who were down and about and in,
right? It
made a big difference. Okay, sorry, this is about you, not about me.
No,
it's about you. Okay. Question number 2.
You are from me.
That's
okay.
True. Okay, here we are. Okay, number 2.
Yeah.
A key to strategic communication is said to be consistency, especially as companies grow in complexity, which as HSN has grown over the years. Side note, so she's been there since they were on radio. Yeah, that's actually how HSN began, on radio, literally crawling through holes to get products and crawling back out to talk about them, right? And then it went to local television, and then now the network giant, massive conglomerate or whatever it is that is HSN. Sorry, back to the question. So as HSN has grown and evolved over the years, can you give an example of when consistent communication in the company was the most relevant?
That's funny, because really from the beginning. Because it was 2 gentlemen, Bud and Roy was sort of like the finances, but it was Bud's idea. And from the very beginning, what was most important that he conveyed to us, that I think still is the same today, was that it's about the customer. And the customer and the customer experience. And back then when we were local, obviously it was quite different, and you could sort of do anything, say anything, but it was all about having fun and remembering that regardless of what you're selling, like one line Bud gave me years ago, and it's always stuck with me, is like, one man's piece of junk is another man's treasure,
So
right? Because
true.
I can look at it and go, oh my God, it's hideous. I wouldn't want it in my house, right?
Right.
Like the reindeer candelabras.
Yes, right.
And then somebody else would be like, oh, I've been waiting forever for that. So that part was so important then, and still to this day.
It's interesting that after you must have been through at least like 6 or 7 full regime changes, like
I
full
think it's like 9.
9.
I think
Holy
it's
cow!
9.
Okay, so
to
even
write them all
through
down.
that, it's pretty interesting that they've kept that message, and that's probably a reason why HSN's stayed as successful as it is.
And I think that's why, like today, that's because now you have the internet and you have the Amazons of the world, and people can go online in 2 seconds and click and buy. But the entertainment part of it and the connection, I guess that's a better word, the connection part of it, right, that we did back then is still and probably almost more important now to kind of differentiate ourselves from, the internet.
Competitors, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting. Awesome. Right. Question number 3.
Okay.
Research suggests that companies adhere to an unspoken social contract, which can be explicit, like laws and regulations, implicit, consumer or stakeholder general, like expectations,
Right.
or frontier, like shaped from trends, social norms, things like that. Can you offer an example of one that you have or you continue to encounter?
I think, laws and regulations, how I do my job as a host is basically the same. So that's something that we, you have to adhere to, and there's certain expectations. And expectations for me as a host, but then also for stockholders and for viewers who want to know now that when you have the bottle of water, you have to be prepared, know everything about it. So and I think to that point, the importance of the research that we do to make sure that it's an honest, credible presentation is so important. And I think the only thing maybe that sort of changed with that, or they've tried to change, I know they've tried to sort of skew the viewer a little younger, and that's been a big challenge. As you know, 20-somethings, 30-somethings, or for the most part, are shopping online. So that's been something that the company has tried to do, and I've watched them obviously try at different times, and it's never really worked.
Interesting. So if I can kind of dissect,
I know it's
from
all
that.
over the place.
It's okay because you touched kind of on all 3. So
Yeah.
explicitly saying there are things you can and can't say on air legally.
Right.
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 And then
right.
implicitly kind of the customers trust in you that what you are sharing and what you're presenting
Right.
is credible.
Right. They have their expectations. You're right. So how I'm going to present it, what I'm going to say, what I'm going to share, that it's the truth about the item. And years and years ago, it would be, you could basically say whatever you wanted to say. You could say it was blue and it was green, but the factual, being factual, that part of it falls right into their expectations. They expect it to be that way.
Right.
And then now you're legally bound. So it
Right.
has to be that way. So it's
you
not
kinda
just what they
hit
expect.
all 3, right? And then if you're going back and bringing in frontier, being the company's expectation for you to bring on the new younger customer,
Right.
but you still have that social contract of keeping your existing customer
Right.
who's a little older just as engaged.
Right. And I think the thing with that is I find with fashions, you can elevate her. So you can kind of, obviously the trends, what's going to work for you is not necessarily going to work for me. I could maybe wear it, but it wouldn't be right. So you can elevate her to different things. So you're keeping that constant customer that we've had for so many years. For 37 years. So when it was my anniversary, it was so funny just even posting on Facebook and listening to people who still shop today that shop with me back then, even before you were born. So
Oh
it's
my gosh,
amazing.
yeah.
I know, it's wow. So that's right. So listen, that loyalty in any company, when they try to get away from that loyalty, good luck.
Right.
Because that is the demise of your company. You have to respect and maintain and keep interested and supply what your core customer wants, as well as still trying to bring in more, obviously.
Right. So it's interesting that you say that. It's really applicable. I didn't really have a question on this, but how as you're evolving, that you have to stay aware of your your core person, right? Not necessarily that it's
right.
like we read a lot about socio-political problems and things like that, but it's not necessarily like that, but more implicit to the unspoken, right? And there's a lot, the ambiguity, which we're going to get to that. We're going to get to the ambiguity. But I really love that you bring it up. Total side note to this: whenever she posts anything online, and it's like, if I'm halfway in it, they're like, "Oh God, Noelle, I remember when you were pregnant, Bobbi, and there was Tootie, and there was chocolate," and it's a little freaky sometimes, but it's very exciting, and that definitely proves loyalty.
As I say, they don't really care who you're coming up with. You'd be coming up with the Pope, they'd be like, all right. But if it's the kid, the dog, the husband, or the mother, that's
buttons, hot buttons. Oh my God. Okay, moving on. Actually, the socio-political. So, can you actually recall any socio-political issue that gave a negative image to HSN, and what did the company do to combat that, if that was even an issue?
I can't think of anything specifically negative, but I think to almost to become more philanthropic and to give back, like we created, actually it's been 10 years this year, HSN Cares, which was something really huge that the company did. And we do a lot of different things. Like we do Homes for Humanity, Habitat for Humanity.
Habitat for Humanity.
So building homes, and then going like also like Ronald McDonald House.
Oh yes,
right, love that. Right. So a lot of people, you can as an employee, you can take a couple of days a year and do any of that. And then we had, like, my favorite was with St. Jude. We have an association with St. Jude, which is so awesome.
Oh my gosh, fabulous.
We go up with Lancome, and they brought like all these beauty products, and we did makeovers on these amazing girls and kids that would just, I remember when I walked in there, and my colleague and I, we were just like, we're gonna like sob all day. It was so intense to see the little 2-year-old coming by in a radio flyer, like hooked up. But I'm telling you, the more we were there, they make it such a happy environment, and that whole experience, to look at their faces when they looked in the mirror after with their makeup, it was so awesome. So I think that's, not that it was anything negative, but it was time to give back.
Right, you almost were ahead of the curve, which again, a lot of our readings were about, like not being so reactive, but being proactive, in which HSN did that, right? Before it was a problem, before there were any social backlash to not having a philanthropic arm, if you will. That's fabulous. I love what they do for St. Jude around Christmas with the ornaments.
Oh, the ornaments, right? Because they have a whole collection where like certain celebrities do specific ornaments, and then they kind of they theme them, whatever. So if it's a beauty product, like, Iris Apfel's known for those big red glasses. Oh my gosh, so she did a little lady with big red glasses.
Oh my God,
hilarious.
so great.
Yeah, it was very fun.
HSN around Christmas time, check it out.
Check it out.
Absolutely adorable. Okay, moving on. We're almost done. Sorry, honey, being a great cameraman. Okay, how would you define strategic ambiguity? Start there.
Okay.
This is supposed to be a difficult question.
Yeah, well, it is.
It's ambiguous.
Well, yeah, and I think that, obviously, ambiguity, if it's clear, it's not clear, but strategically, like, for me, like how I would use it, I mean, like, there are the facts, and the facts are what the facts are, but there are also different ways to present those facts. So, I mean, how I'm going to present them are different than how somebody else is going to present them.
Right.
And I guess that's what I would refer to with the strategic part of it. I think.
No, that was great. I mean, so the whole reason I asked that is because it is supposed to be ambiguous. It's inherent to its name. So like there's a lot of conversation.
Oh, we're recording right now, Jer.
We're in the middle of an interview, Jer Bear, but
sorry.
The blower is right
Hey, Jer.
here.
Go to it.
Okay.
Blower's over here. It's fine. We're gonna carry on right through this. So ambiguity, we read a lot about that, and that's the whole point, right? You're actually using ambiguity not necessarily in a negative connotation, which is usually what it's surrounded with, right? But rather in a positive, as in Martin. Life. Life happens.
That's life here. Sorry.
This is what happens. Okay. But I love that you said it like that, because in my eyes, from watching you a million years, my entire business, and wanting to be just like that, Martin, can you stop? Live. Live television.
Yes,
everyone.
seriously.
This is what happened. So after having watched you for so long, that you do that, right? When you structure how you present something to someone, you say it in a certain manner, not to be misleading,
Right.
but to be strategically ambiguous. You're
Right.
leaving it open to interpretation, right?
Kind of goes back to what we said about one man's piece of junk is another man's treasure, right? I mean,
Yep.
I'm going to present this in a certain way because I'm going to look at the product as if you are looking at it and it's something you've always wanted. So that's a whole different approach, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I interpret that.
No, I knew when I was reading it, this is the thing that I was thinking. I'm like, oh my God, Mom does this all the time. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it,
Yeah.
instead of just verbatim, like, what does this actually mean?
Right.
Awesome.
Right,
Fabulous.
wrong, black, white, gray.
Right, gray.
Yeah,
And
gray.
it's all gray.
Gray.
It's all gray, and that's good. Gray
Many
is good.
shades.
Okay, so next one. Communication theorists have described strategic ambiguity as an opposite to message control, but rather message delivery that's easy to digest and flexible enough to create one's own meaning, right? Can you recall a time when HSN used this specifically with employees?
Oh, yes. Mindy, back to Mindy. Along with her disruptive theme, she came up with a great tagline, and it was, "It's fun here." And, here again, it was something that everybody could embrace because my interpretation of that is going to be totally different than, the camera crew. But it was great to think about because when you think that way, you realize, listen, nobody needs anything. Probably none of us really need to buy anything specific. I mean, food, water, but you're shopping because we transport you somewhere else. You're a diversion. I mean, and it's important to remember that it needs to be fun. You need to make it fun. You need to make it engaging. You need to make it exciting, and the same like with the camera crew. Instead of just shooting that bottle standing there, come in from an angle, or so it applied to everyone differently, obviously, in all different areas, but it was great, and everybody loved it. It was so funny. Even like it was something, even the viewers.
Yeah, it was something everybody could embrace,
Yeah,
and it was
exactly.
strategically ambiguous that it could mean a lot of different things. Like
Right.
And to your point, another example of that, like everyone up in the tower doing the behind the scenes office work, the buyers and stuff,
Right.
looking for things that are fun and
Right.
different and
Right.
and finding fun every day in your life. So I love that.
Okay,
Great
good.
example, Mama. Great example.
Thank you, sweet pea.
Okay, last question. Swear, we're almost there. Researchers posit that ambiguity is contextual. What are your thoughts, and how do you use that to your advantage?
I think sort of going back to what I was saying before. I mean, to me, you're taking I'm not going to take any. I'm going to take maybe some things out of context, but I'm going to present them in a totally different way. And how I would approach an item is going to be totally different than how somebody else is going to approach an item. How somebody's going to sell an item is going to be different. And that's what I would consider that to be.
I
Do you
completely
think I
agree
should
with
be in
you.
a different direction with that?
No, I just have a specific example in mind for when
You
I
do?
wrote this. This is what
Okay,
I was thinking
tell
of.
me.
Was like, for example, when you sell something like hair removal, right?
Right.
Go with me here.
Right.
You're going with hair removal. You always turn to the camera and you're like laser focused. Like, imagine yourself in a bathing suit on the side,
Right,
on
right,
the beach,
right.
rolling in the sun and enjoying
Yeah.
every moment of it, and not having to worry about your leg hair. And like, not necessarily ambiguous, but taking that context and moving it to a completely different place, and how you're positioning it. Again, nobody actually needs hair removal.
Right,
Notably,
right,
like
right.
$100 hair removal.
Yeah,
When you
exactly.
can buy a $2 razor.
Exactly.
But what you're doing is you're being ambiguous with how that's going to affect your life.
Right. And we you know what? We have to do that with everything, right? I mean, it's sort of like, and I try to do that with every item initially, kind of just setting it up, right? Setting up, create a story, create something that they can relate to, right? And I think, and again, like I said, they may look at it and go, I never realized I needed that. And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I really do need that. But yeah, exactly. So that's sort of.
And even in like vitamins, right? Like, oh, take this B12 and it may
More energy.
increase your
Right.
energy, but
Right.
whoever, you're leaving it open to interpretation so anybody else can make their own meaning for it.
Right, and
Right.
that's a luxury of sales. I mean, that's you. It is your responsibility as the salesperson to create that world for them, to make people, understand or look at things differently. That's probably a better way. It's not, I don't want to make anybody buy anything they really don't want, but sometimes there are things that when somebody introduces you to them, explains them to you, you're like, yes, I really do need that.
Right.
I mean, that's a difference in, like we said, like the V8 vacuum we were talking about a little earlier, right? The cordless
Yep.
vacuum or the little dust and sweep pan. So, I mean, it's that part of what we do. It is exciting and it is ambiguous and it's different for everybody. Right. So there's no, and I don't think any two of us really are the same on the air. But the underlying fact of all of that, I think, has to be the truth. And has to be the honesty of what the product, what the product really is.
Right.
So I mean, you can color it, right, any different way, but that has to be what they're left with. That, and then the fun of knowing, okay, I just bought this, I can't
coming
wait.
in the mail, I'm
That
so
truck is
excited.
going to pull up in front of my house, and 7
change your
days,
day.
maybe 4.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, and I swear, I'm like, did you like read my articles? I know you didn't because I didn't give them to you.
No, I did
but
not.
for real, so much of what you just said is how people recommending that
Right.
organizations use strategic ambiguity to do the same thing that you're saying with product sales, but to use that across any infrastructure, right? And to make it better and to use it to your advantage versus being so reactive.
Well, and
right?
I think people have to feel part of something. That, I mean, when you come into an environment or you're going into a new business and it's, like I said, no one's going to approach it the same way.
Right.
But you have to be able to be somewhat creative, or maybe that's obviously more important in our business. But I think really in any business, you want to be creative. You hire an employee, you want that employee to feel open to share his ideas and be creative and be stimulated and try and find new ways.
Right.
So it kind of all falls into that same category.
It sure does.
Yeah.
It sure does. Great job, Mom.
All right,
If you're
sweetie.
still watching, great job to you for hanging on for us this entire time.
Thank you, Martin, for being
Thank
finally
you, Martin, for
resting.
doing this and barking halfway through. So thanks, guys. Looking forward to comments. Bye.